Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project. I'm your host, Duc Ong with Tri-City Equity Group. Today we have Ryan Webster on the show. Ryan is co-founder of Equity Yield Group, a real estate investment firm specializing in institutional-grade A, B-class multifamily. He's an award-winning home builder with experience in construction and project management. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So for those that aren't familiar with you, could you tell our audience how you got started on your journey into real estate investing?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been in the real estate profession in one capacity or another. Prior to multifamily acquisitions, I owned and operated a construction development company here in the Midwest. Did that for a number of years. Then 2 years ago, disposed of that company and started Equity Yield Group and switched over to acquisition of stabilized assets.
So you had an amazing 2021, closing 130 million. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, no, it was an interesting time to jump into acquisitions, kind of rolling out of into the post-COVID environment. But yeah, we were quite lucky, managed to acquire a number of great assets that are performing well, most of which are located in and around Tampa, Florida.
Okay. Can you tell us about your first deal using institutional capital?
Yeah, we acquired our first deal back in March of 2021. It was a 148 unit, 2016 built multifamily community in Sarasota, Florida. And it was really not necessarily unique as we're used to these kind of things, but a lot of people think of value add as it has to be, 70s, 80s product. And you have to put a lot of CapEx into it. That's not necessarily true. This particular property, 2016 built, newer property, obviously, very well located. It was well amenitized. The exteriors look nice. There's no deferred maintenance. But the interiors, they looked probably 20 years older than they were. And a lot of people don't realize developers are building and project costs are very expensive and they're variable throughout the project. And obviously the finishes get done last. And as you have cost overruns in the beginning of the project, those usually get made up in the end. You end up cheapening finishes. And this was a prime example of that, where these had very cheap, very ugly kitchens in these apartments. So we were able to come in, spend a little bit of CapEx and improve the kitchens and see some very meaningful rent increases.
So who did you work with for the institutional capital?
Yeah, we worked with a firm called Electra Capital. They're a partner of American Landmark. So they're actually a REIT. So there's a few different caveats that come with using capital that comes from a REIT.
Yeah. So what are some of those advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, I mean, the advantage is that, they can come in and they can write a pretty sizable check. But there's a very heavy due diligence process on the sponsor and the operations team, and then the deal and the business plan. So as far as, certainty of closing with that money, you got to have a very good business plan and be able to communicate that to their equity committee. And work through their approval process to make sure that when you get to the closing date, they're there and ready to write the check.
Okay. And how did you get hooked up with those guys?
Yeah, we have a capital markets broker that we work with for both debt and equity.
Got it. Okay. And how did you go about selecting your markets?
Yeah, we're very big on fundamentals. We look for markets with higher population growth and inbound net migration. We look for denser markets. If you go across the Sun Belt, most of the major markets in the Sun Belt are experiencing this very high inbound migration. Outside of that, we look for diverse employment markets and stable economies and growing wages. And then favorable rent to income ratios. You want to make sure that the incomes of the jobs in the area support the cost of rent. Then we look for a disparity between the cost to rent versus the cost to own homes in those markets. We're looking for more affordable rental options than there are to own homes. And then given my development background, another metric we really look into is net absorption and new deliveries. We want to be in an area that's supply constrained. No one's going to come in and build 10,000 units next door to us. where we're going to end up fighting concessions and vacancy. We want to be in an infill location with very limited competitors and opportunity for new competitors.
That makes sense. So looking for a moat, basically.
Yep, absolutely.
How has the rise in material costs affected your underwriting and operations?
Fortunately, we really haven't seen the impact of that. Given my construction background, we're pretty good at dialing in our renovation costs and understanding, what those costs truly are going to be, and avoiding putting change orders and change of scope, as well as being able to forecast an appropriate amount of contingency in our projects. So to date, we've been fortunate and haven't seen the impact of rising material costs affecting any of our renovations.
Are you guys vertically integrated with the construction arm, or?
No, we've had talks about bringing that in-house, but right now we run that through our third-party management company.
Got it. How has COVID affected your operations?
Haven't really seen any effect in COVID. It's more been a proof of concept in our investment thesis. So we look for, late model product that's very well located. We kind of this A-, B+ grade properties. And with that, we didn't see the collections issues that you saw on some of the C-class workforce housing, where tenants weren't paying and they knew they couldn't be evicted. They didn't care. So we performed very well throughout COVID. We didn't see any of those collections issues.
I see. What has helped you win deals in such a competitive low cap rate market?
It's a numbers game. It's really persistence. We underwrite a lot of deals. We put a lot of offers in, a lot of best and finals, a lot of buyer interviews, and our strike rate is pretty low. But it's really about getting out there and coming in second place, and then waking up the next day and doing it again and putting some LOIs out there.
What would you say your percentages of like closed deals to the number that you underwrite?
Oh, it's 2021. I mean, we probably underwrote 350 deals and closed 4.
So about like 1% or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. It's a crazy market.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you ensure that your underwriting is conservative enough? And what type of stress tests do you use?
Underwriting is really about, putting the structure of the business plan together and taking a look at what is the historical performance and where you want to take the property, and then laying out the path between the two. And there's a number of variables that come along with that, and the key performance metrics that our asset management team tracks. But among those are vacancy, organic rent growth, return on cost on renovating units, renovation premium, and then looking at the reversion cap rate and the value at sale. So those particular metrics we stress test up and down and see how they impact investor returns to determine if it's work out. If things don't go according to plan, is it still within the range for our projected return profile or not?
So how are you underwriting that reversion cap rate?
We kind of take a dual approach. We have the classic cap rate escalator, and we'll add anywhere from 10 to 20 basis points per hold year. From our going in cap rate. But we also like to look at a couple more things on the purchase price and price per unit. We want to make sure the price per unit that we're selling at has been seen in the market before. We're not trying to prove out, a new high sales point. And then we look into replacement cost. I want to make sure that we're acquiring an asset below replacement cost.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds like you have quite a bit of experience in various aspects of real estate. So what's next on the horizon for you?
We're continuing to try to acquire some more assets this year. It'd be nice to do another couple $100 million in assets in 2022. Right now, it's really about navigating the debt market and trying to get assets that are going to generate cash flow in a moving debt market.
Yeah. So how are you seeing rates increasing, affecting cap rates and that kind of thing?
I haven't really seen, cap rate expansion, and the markets that we shop in, I don't know that I really expect cap rates to expand. They may start to level off, given that we've seen very aggressive cap rate compression over the last 12 to 24 months. But the cost of debt service does directly impact cash flows. And for traditional value add deals where you're typically using floating rate bridge debt and a lot of times underwriting to a refinance, you have to be conscious of a couple things. First is the debt service going forward. We underwrite month over month debt service against the forward curve. And we typically purchase very aggressive interest rate caps, but those have gotten quite expensive here, even in the last couple of weeks. We quoted one last week at $6 million for a 50 basis points rate cap. So it's really a lot of money to drop into the sources uses to try to hedge that interest rate. But it's really important to, at the very least, have an accurate picture of what your future debt service is going to be and how that's going to impact cash flows. And then if you are planning to refinance, you got to give some thought to what will those potential proceeds be. If you're trying to back into a minimum 1.25 amortizing DSCR, you got to look at forward treasuries 3 years in advance whenever you're planning on this potential refi and put a 200 basis point spread on that and then calculate your DSCR. And what we're seeing is, we're coming up with 50% leverage at refinance. So it's definitely not like it was 12 months ago.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's transition to our fire round. What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Read one recently, The Creature of Jekyll Island, which kind of talks about the Federal Reserve System. And that was a very interesting and relevant book for the times.
Yeah, with like 8% plus CPI, right? It's like the source of it. It's just
absolutely
a fractional reserve banking system.
Yeah, it's very interesting how monetary policy can affect things. But we've got some other things going on other than strictly monetary policy. I think there's some supply chain issues there contributing to inflation.
Definitely. What is your superpower?
Really probably persistence. Just going after it and not quitting until it's done.
Definitely a necessary ingredient in a competitive multifamily market, right?
Yeah, and I think that's part of real estate investment as a whole. It really takes grit to be a real estate investor.
Yep, couldn't agree more. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career?
Really, it's just kind of doing things the way we do. We tend to be, very proactive and more organized, and we've seen over the years that's led us to execute at a higher level than some of our competitors, and it makes operations a lot easier for us when you're able to solve problems proactively instead of running around trying to put fires out.
Yep, that makes sense. For the busy working professional working towards financial freedom, what advice do you have?
Start investing in cash flowing real estate now. I think we all say the same thing. We wish we would have started sooner.
Yep. And how can our audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is go to our website at equityyieldgroup.com. You can connect with us, sign up for our newsletter there, fill out our investor intake form if you're interested in joining our investor network, as well as contact us directly if you had any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If you're interested in investing with us, go to tricityequity.com to learn more. To connect with like-minded investors, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and more. If you found value in this podcast, please subscribe and give us a review. If you know anyone who might resonate with today's podcast, please share the episode with them. We're also super excited to share with everyone our upcoming conference, the Hawaii Millionaire Mindset Conference, The Blueprint. Come join top industry leaders for motivation, training, and lots of networking. This will be happening in beautiful Hawaii this summer, July 21st to 24th, 2022. Early bird specials are still happening, so if you want the absolute best pricing, go to millionairesmindsetblueprint.com to find out more. See you next time.